Nothing's better than a loopy podcast.
We are so fancy.
I think the word you were looking for was awesome.
Hey, welcome back or welcome to the Reading Queens podcast. Today we have a super fun episode. We're here with Alexandra Bracken, the author of Lore and The Darkest Minds and a bunch of other awesome books. And yeah, hi, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I'm Valia, by the way. Hello. And Kay is also here.
Hello.
Yeah, and so we talked about being loopy, and this is just going to be an awesome podcast, and we're just going to hang out and talk. So first of all, Alex, I'm going to have you introduce yourself to our listeners as if like somebody doesn't know you, but go ahead.
Plenty of people have no idea who I am. If you hear any noises in the background, that is my adorable tiny menace of a dog named Tennyson. Can you guys hear him?
Yeah, running around. We're just going to keep it in. It's fine.
He's decided to, allow me to describe the situation. He's decided to take his treat ball, which you like punch to get the treats out of it, like dips and pops back up. I'm trying to think, there used to be like a kid's toy like that too, where you would kind of like punch an inflatable clown or something. I don't know what the correct term is, but he always does this whenever like any sort of podcast, any sort of like recorded interview is happening, but he keeps hitting it against this water bowl to try to get the treats out. Like he hits it against something solid. He's too smart. Anyway,
adorable.
Sorry for that extremely long tangent. Feel free to edit that out. I'm so used to this. I literally just reached for my book to show off, even though this is a podcast. I'm sorry. I'll show it to you guys.
Yes, we love it.
Talking on Zoom. I'm Alex. I am the author of, I think, 13 books now, including, as Valia said, the Darkest Mind series, and most recently Lore. And Lore is a contemporary YA fantasy. So it's set in modern times, it's set in modern day New York City, but it is basically, I think the pitch that everyone has settled on is that it's sort of like Percy Jackson meets the Hunger Games, where all of these families that are descended from the ancient Greek heroes are essentially involved in this week-long hunt where if they can kill one of these gods who are walking the earth as mortal, they can take that god's power and immortality. And it's about a girl who gets really drawn back into that world, kind of against her will, and has to fight her way back out of the darkness. Tenny, really. I'm sorry, guys. I'm like...
It's okay. It's like having children. It's fine.
His timing is impeccable. Let me just say that.
He was amping up the background noise because you were talking about something dramatic, so it works.
Yeah, he's literally enacting the hunt, the violent, deadly hunt that takes place all across New York City.
It's the score for our podcast.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I was also going to say about Lore, if you haven't read it yet, as a reader, you should definitely read it. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
I know I've already talked about Lore a few times on the podcast, but it definitely was one of my favorite books of the year last year that I read. I was so excited to read it. It did not disappoint. It's such a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, this was like my pandemic book where it was like my constant companion throughout the pandemic. And I ended up working on it for a lot longer than I would normally have with a book because of the way the pandemic affected my publisher. Lore is published by Disney Hyperion, obviously an arm of Disney. And so during the pandemic, when they had their furloughs, it impacted the publisher too. So half of their staff, including my editor, were furloughed. And so it created this kind of really difficult production schedule for the book. And so I had a lot of time to really edit it and live with the story. And it ended up being worth it in the end. But during that whole pandemic year, I was like, oh gosh, is anyone going to like this book? I like go into the weeds of Greek mythology. Like contemporary fantasy has not really been a thing in a really long time. People, I think, got very burnt out on it in the early days of YA, kind of in that post-Twilight era before we moved on to the dystopian era with the Hunger Games. But I've been so thankful to see it's been received this well and that people are into it. And now there are a lot more Greek mythology books coming out. So I'm like, Yes. I cannot take credit for that at all, obviously, but I just am so excited because I love Greek mythology and I love books that incorporate it. And I think I accidentally caught just a wave that was already coming.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite books of the year too, which and the podcast knows I'm not biased at all. Okay.
Well, I'm not biased.
But Kay still
was my favorite.
Yeah, Kay is very picky about her books. So for her to,
I feel very honored.
You should. She's very picky. Anyway, it's a good quality to have. I didn't say it as a bad thing, but well, I'm very excited for you to be here because the author interviews that we do are like my favorite because especially when it's outside of the queens, because like I talk to the queens all the time, but when we have like a guest author, I'm like, yes, like this is the most fun. We just get to geek out about books for like 45 minutes.
I love it too. It's so fun to just like exchange ideas, talk about storytelling. And I think, post pandemic, like one of the things I'm most looking forward to is like going to festivals and being around other authors and seeing people in person, meeting readers again. So it's like, it's always so fun to be able to have a chat with a couple author buddies and just like talk about writing, talk about things we love.
And you, the listeners, get to hear
exactly
talk.
Just our spacey all over the place. Let's talk about whatever conversation. So Kay has actually like specific questions that she has prepared because she is the brilliant one out of the two of us. I'm just like, let's be on the podcast.
Valia's very brilliant, but I do have to say that she always makes me come up with the questions, guys. Okay.
Yeah, because you do have the best questions.
Poor Valia is about to be very bored because one thing I did not mention when I was supposed to be introducing myself is that I also live in Arizona. I was born and raised here, but lived in New York for a while. And I worked in the traditional publishing industry for about 6 years and then eventually moved back to Arizona where I see Valia all the time. And we talk about writing and publishing and all of that. So I feel like I'm about to bore her with my
No, it's answers. Still my favorite thing, okay? Anyway, moving on. Okay, Kay, take it away.
All right. Here's the question. Oh, I never know. I have like this whole list and I'm like, which one should I ask first? And I'm like, I'll just figure it out in the moment. Except now it's the moment and I don't know. Okay. We'll start with a fun one first.
Okay.
What is your favorite type of sandwich?
Ooh.
I know, you didn't think we were going to talk about this today.
These are on the spot. Yep, these are on the spot questions. Like she's not prepared.
It really depends on my mood, which is like a weird thing to say, but like sometimes it's like, I'm like, oh, you know what sounds amazing right now is like a grilled cheese sandwich or like a peanut butter and banana sandwich. Like I regressed back into childhood. Not that you need an excuse to ever eat those things. I don't know why this popped into my head, but Starbucks, I don't know if they still have it. When I would work in Starbucks cafes when I lived in New York, I would always eat their egg salad sandwich. And so I feel like a weird loyalty to an egg salad sandwich.
Yeah. Nostalgia, probably.
Yeah, I don't know why that was the first thing that popped into my head. I recently discovered an amazing sandwich shop near me. It's kind of like an old-fashioned sandwich shop that I'll have to take Valia to. Ooh. But they have like an amazing turkey sandwich there. So so many different ways to answer this question.
I know, I love this.
I love that you had I love that you actually had answers.
I know, and then I was like, and then like I think like most of all, I love like a breakfast sandwich. It's just the perfect tidy little breakfast and it's so satisfying. That's especially awesome. If you can get it on a pretzel bun.
So if you guys wasn't hungry before.
I had this many opinions on sandwiches.
You know, I do have to say about a peanut butter and banana. The first time I ever heard about that kind of sandwich was in a book. I don't remember which book. Maybe Wayside School. You guys remember those books?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was like, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. You know what I mean? But then it was just like he made it sound so good in the books. I was like, I gotta try it. And if you haven't tried it, guys, it is good, okay? Strong recommendation.
Perfect combo of salty and sweet. I also, I guess my mom was not like one of those like super health conscious moms. And by the time I was in second grade, it was sort of like, oh, you can make your lunches now. So I was like, she would get that like fluffernutter stuff too. The like literal, is that what it's called? Fluffernutter? It's the like the marshmallow that you like scoop out of the jar. Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Marshmallow fluff? I don't know what it's called.
Is a fluffernutter.
We're so good at this.
Where did I get that name from? But that was also like, that should be disgusting, but it's delicious. So I feel like I had all of the really unhealthy sandwiches as a child, including the Lunchables.
Nice. But now you have great opinions on sandwiches, so it clearly set you up.
Honestly, I really did not know I had this many opinions on sandwiches.
Nice. Okay, so before we do a writing question, I want to do another just kind of fun question.
Okay.
Who was your first animated character crush? Okay, or just like a character that you were like, oh yeah, he looks good.
Definitely Endymion. Is that you know what? That's
from
a
Sailor Moon
name. From Sailor Moon.
Yeah, Tuxedo Mask.
From Sailor Moon.
We know of him in America. Tuxedo Mask. It's like, I'm trying to remember his Japanese name. Tuxedo Common, maybe something like that. I'm sure someone will.
You guys can tell us.
Correct me.
Yeah,
I know. Sorry. It's been a while since but I like loved him, and I loved his like amazing tuxedo that made no sense, and the rose. Like I loved. It's so interesting to think about this, but like when I was a kid, I would do. There's not a whole lot you can do in the summer in the Phoenix Scottsdale area because it's so hot. So we would take like swimming and diving lessons just to get us out of the house. And so before diving, they would always have like a couple episodes of Sailor Moon on TV, which is kind of interesting to think about. I'm trying to remember if it was on like, which channel was it on? Maybe like USA or something. It was a very, or no, UPN. Was that what it was before the CW? Does anyone remember?
It was something like that, yeah.
It was like a very random channel to be showing.
Definitely do not know the names of channels.
Yeah. I know, I was like, that's true. You are not
I mean, I don't think I ever knew that ever at any point in my life.
Well, it was the English dub. The English dub of Sailor Moon is like, the original English dub was something to behold. But yeah, he was definitely, I think, my first animated crush. But I also really loved Dimitri from Anastasia. Dimitri with the good hair.
I was just waiting for that. I was like, it's got to be Dimitri from Anastasia, or I'm gonna be disappointed. And it was. Although,
yes.
Yeah. Okay, Tuxedo Mask. That's his name. I've never seen Sailor Moon. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Oh, it's so good. I love the manga too. Like, it's just a beautiful manga. I need to actually go back and reread it. I think I still have the bind-ups that I need to like go into my childhood bedroom and retrieve so I can reread them. But yeah, Tuxedo Mask.
See, I didn't know that about you, and that's something we agree on, so I love it.
Did you also watch Sailor Moon a lot, Valia?
I did. I actually watched it in Russia too. And then I remember reading, I never bought the manga, but I read them in Borders because they had a whole section. So I would just go in there and I would read them in there.
R.I.P. Borders. Yeah, it's amazing. Sailor Moon really had such global appeal. It's really, I credit that more than something like Buffy as being like my first instance of like girl power media.
Cool.
I love that. Yeah. Cool.
Oh yes, girl power of the 90s. That was so fun. I loved that. I loved that.
Like tied into the Spice Girls and all of that too. Yeah.
It's good times. Good time to be a girl.
Yeah.
Although I guess there were, it only happened because we're like, wait, time, but,
no.
It was fun to be empowered at a time like that. Okay, I've got to mark these questions off or else I'm going to forget where I am. All right, here's a question that actually is about your writing. Who was your favorite main character to write and why?
Yes, choose a favorite child and go.
Okay, you can, if it's too hard to choose, you can just choose your favorite right now at this moment,
Oh, see, it's like I love them all for different reasons. Like Ruby was such like Ruby from the Darkest Minds was such like a sad headspace to occupy that I really like feel emotionally close to her. But like honestly, the most fun I had was probably a tie between Lore and Prosper from my middle grade book, The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. He has like the funniest, most self-deprecating voice to me. It's like, now that I've said that, like I just in my humble opinion, I just like loved writing in his voice, and he was always so exasperated, and like, I also got to write Alistair the demon's voice too, and he was so snarky, so I really had so much fun writing that series. But yeah, and Laura's also pretty snarky and really gets into New York City specific things, so I enjoyed her voice too, and I'm enjoying my new protagonist Tamsin as well. Yeah, it's like impossible to choose a favorite, but I think Prosper made me laugh the most as I was writing it, as weird as that sounds, considering he's like coming from my own head. But I also really enjoyed Lore's arc and Ruby's arc too, so yeah.
I love that. That's such a great answer. I think it's cool to, as an author, a lot of maybe readers don't realize this, but there really is, the character does kind of take the story away from you a little bit. And
yeah,
so I totally understand what you're saying, how it's like he made me laugh and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you wrote it, but that was still him that kind of took it away. These characters kind of take a life of their own. So
yeah, and honestly, I felt that the most with the Darkest Mind series. It was almost like unsettling how like deep I felt into Ruby's point of view, and how well I knew all of the main characters in that series, like right from the start. I don't think I've had that experience since. I have, but it just not quite as like deeply. For some reason, those characters like really jumped out at me and kind of took root in my brain. And once you're in kind of a deep workflow, it really is the character kind of guiding you as much as you're trying to shape the journey that they're taking. And it's a really wonderful kind of magical experience. It's one of my favorite parts about writing.
That's so cool. I love that. And if you haven't read The Darkest Minds yet, yeah, the characters in that book are so real. They just feel like they really do have like their own aspirations and their own, personalities and everything. So I love that, you felt that way. It's really obvious, I guess, reading the books that, they really took a life of their own. So I love that.
It's so crazy too, because I remember I have such a distinct, my memory is terrible, as Valia can attest to, but like I have such a distinct crystal clear memory of like being on the New York City subway and jotting down like the first notes about their characters. And really the only thing I think that changed from that initial spread of notes was Liam's last name. But yeah, it's really wild how they kind of popped into my head fully formed, and I wish that would continue to happen.
Yep.
But it's like I always feel like it's such a good sign when that does happen as you're writing, and it's important that writers feel really close to whatever character that they're writing, or just really try to inhabit their world.
This is why every single time we have a conversation, I just get like really inspired and I want to go write. Because you like bring out all those things about writing that I love so much. It's like, yeah,
but I will say, like I mentioned before, like that was a really abnormal experience for me. Most of the time I have to like sit down at my computer and write a draft of the book and get to know the characters that way. And so inevitably during revision, I'm like going in and making sure their personalities are more distinct, their voices are more distinct. Sometimes I really do struggle to kind of like pin down a character in a book. I have a character like that in my new one, Silver in the Bone, who was just like giving me the worst trouble trying to figure out her arc, and how she would kind of like mesh within this character group. Like that's another really important thing to think about, is how is the flow of your main and supporting cast. Like I love writing a group dynamic, but like making sure all the voices sound distinct and like trying to figure out how their personalities clash, but also like mesh really well. Like I love that. That's one of my favorite parts about brainstorming out my cast, is figuring out the group dynamic. But sometimes I get like a character who just will not behave and does not want to reveal themselves quite yet.
Okay, cool. Shall we get back to more questions?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. This question is going to be prefaced by once upon a time, I read an email from Alexandra Bracken. I get her emails because I'm a fan, as we all know. Anyway, she talked about, well, you talked about, now that you're here, I could say you, I guess, how, what was it? What am I trying to say here? You always knew that you wanted to be a writer, that you wanted to write kids' books, like books for kids or teenagers, whatever. But, and I just thought that was so cool that you always knew that was something you wanted to do. So just kind of, will you expand on that a little bit and tell us, like, what was the whole story? How did you come to decide? I mean, I guess if you always knew, but just tell the story, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds really ridiculous to say, but I do think that there are people out there who are like me, where they just from like a very young age have this like weird sense of purpose and like sense of surety about like what they're supposed to do with their lives. My dad was kind of the same way, so I guess I must have gotten it from him, where he was like very focused and knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life when he was a kid. His was like working in real estate though, which seems like an interesting choice for like a second or third grader. But I was such a big reader when I was a kid. I actually one year got an award from my elementary school library for checking out the most books in my elementary school class at my grade level.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I was a really big reader. I loved books like Roald Dahl and all of that, and The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. And I think in my mind, I always thought, like, if it's this fun to read, it must be this fun to actually write the stories, which sometimes it is. Other times it's just like a total, like, kind of grueling process of getting all those words down. It probably doesn't help I write such long books. But yeah, it really was just, in third grade, my teacher taught, like, she would always incorporate a creative writing lesson with whatever we were learning about, like in science. So she would have us write and illustrate these little short stories about whatever the science topic was. So the one I still have is the one about the solar system. I like invented a story about how the asteroid belt came to be, and I illustrated it, and then she would like staple it together with cardboard and put contact paper over the cardboard, so it felt like a book.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I think this is like kind of a common thing in schools, but it really was so like joyful and so fun as a kid to get that experience. And I feel like a lot of creative lessons don't quite get as much attention now in schools. I say that not having children, but it feels like the arts in general get deprioritized. But things like that can absolutely change your life and can, set you on your path. So for me, it was a combination of being such a big reader, thinking adults were really boring, and wanting to tell like fun, adventurous stories, and also not reading any adult books in third grade. So did not know like what those books were like. But yeah, from a really young age and pretty much all throughout when I was in middle school, high school, and into college, I always was very focused on children's literature. And then YA didn't really exist until, for me, I would say I don't know, would you guys agree that kind of the Twilight era was really the invention of like not the invention.
No, I would agree with that.
The start of like the YA world that we know now.
Yeah.
It didn't create the YA age group genre, but it did kind of reshape the industry and how, and how the focus on books for older teens, I guess. Because when I was a teenager, really, it was sort of like you went from Sweet Valley High to Stephen King.
Yeah,
like, there was that big
exactly.
jump. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I was not interested in like babysitting, so I did not like the Babysitters Club. I thought Sweet Valley High was so boring. I read a lot of Star Wars books. My dad was a Star Wars collector, so I read like all of the Star Wars tie-in books for the expanded universe. But yeah, so that's really the story. It was just kind of a weird thing. And I remember thinking Like, so I read an interview with Jennifer Lawrence years ago where she was talking about like being a kid and knowing from a really young age she was supposed to be an actor. And so I do think it is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you guys feel that way at all? Did you know from a young age that you really liked writing and that you wanted to maybe write books or write stories?
Well, like I always wrote stuff, but growing up the way I did, I never thought that being an author was a possibility. Like I had to have like a reasonable job. Like there was like two options for me if I was going to provide for my mom when the time came, and it was like an attorney or a doctor. And I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because that's what she was. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to be an attorney. So it's like growing up, I didn't have a choice in my head. And so the moment I did have a choice, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I guess like I wanted to, but it was never a feasible option until later in life.
Yeah. And I mean, I will add just very quickly, you know, that the fact that as a child, I thought I could be published. I thought that was like a reasonable job opportunity for me down the line is in itself a form of privilege because I was seeing authors who looked like me. I was like being told that that was an attainable goal for me. Whereas, you know, a lot of authors of color were not told that as children and really had, you know, are still continuing to have to fight their way into the industry because of all of these, you know, pre-existing conditions and barriers that they face. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to add that very quickly. And it's something I try to acknowledge more and more just because I think it's really important to recognize that, you know, I had a very stable upbringing. I am white. I like went to great schools. And so all of these things are a form of privilege. And I was lucky enough even to graduate college without debt. All of these things are a form of privilege that have allowed me to have the career I have. So I think it's always important to call that out whenever possible. So,
yeah, I love that. I think that's great. You added that. I do have to say I also had that just really strong sense of, I forgot the word now, of course. Don't worry, guys. I'm a writer. Think of words for a living. Purpose. Thank you. Although I wanted to be a teacher. That's what I was always going to do as a kid. So that didn't work out. I mean, I do have 4 kids, so I guess I kind of am a teacher, sort of, in that sense. I did teach preschool for a while, so, I mean, it sort of happened. So I think that's great that your childhood purpose really became your job when you grew up.
And I remember my dad like desperately wanted me to be a lawyer. I even took an LSAT class. I even took the LSATs, and halfway through the LSATs, I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. What am I doing here? And when I got my results, I could like see the exact moment where I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer.
Oh, that's so funny.
So, I mean, but it was like, I mean, I feel like our parents' generation have that real focus on like you get a job that can actually support you and support your family, and it really is a risk to enter any sort of creative field. Although now I feel like with the internet and social media and TikTok and all of that too, and millennials and Gen Z kind of prioritizing their mental health and their sense of well-being, it's become more attainable to work in creative fields and to start your own small business and to really follow your passion, which I think is great. But yeah, my dad was very much on the you should become a lawyer, you should become a lawyer, you should become a lawyer train.
Yay.
I'm
glad you didn't.
I know.
Well, I was never going to become a lawyer, so.
My brain, I mean, I respect lawyers so much. My brain does not work in like a logical flow that way. I had the worst time studying for the LSATs because a lot of the questions are just logic puzzles. And I don't know if your brains are like this too, but my brain always takes the scenic route. Like it likes to kind of meander and think about things and think about motivations. And it's like, I cannot do that like pure straight logic puzzle.
That's funny. Well, now I'm wondering if I would have been good at the LSAT. I don't know.
I was like, you probably would.
Yeah. I think you should like take a couple practice questions and see. But it's also, I think I would have been completely fine as a lawyer, but I just was never going to score super well on the LSAT because of the way my brain processes information.
But that same thing makes you such a good writer, I bet. So, I mean, it is a skill. It is.
Yeah, I think we have to kind of like respect and honor the way our minds work and try to not fight against it necessarily. But, you know, I think people can do whatever they want to do and can attain their goals if they really put their minds to it. So it's, you know, you can overcome, for example, a lack of like, you know, being able to solve logic puzzles. I just did not have that drive and determination to overcome that and really like force myself to figure out a way of getting through those puzzles. So
okay, so this is a question that I did not have on my list, but I'm going to ask it now because it's related to what we're talking about. Okay, has it ever been difficult for you to write a certain character or a certain situation because you did not necessarily have that skill? Like, I had one character who was supposed to be really smart, and I'm like, well, if they're smart, if this character is smart, that means I have to be smart, and I don't always know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds great to have like a super clever character who's always like 10 steps ahead of everybody else until you realize you have to write it. You have to be 10 steps ahead. The one character in the Darkest Minds series that really gave me trouble was Clancy, who's the antagonist. And I kind of think that fits because within the book as well, within the story, he just withholds so much. He holds his, you know, he doesn't want to really have to explain himself. He was harboring a lot of trauma in his past that he wasn't really talking about and so on. And so it really was like an arduous process to get to the core of him as his creator, which again sounds so weird, but in part it was because he was one of those characters who, I think the trope is called like the magnificent bastard, who is like just ahead of everybody else, has these moments of like, oh, I hate you, but like you did pull that off, that sort of a thing.
Impressive, but also why did you do this? Yeah.
Impressive, but still a villain. And so he really gave me and then actually in the Passenger series I had to teach myself about sailing. I had to do a lot of research on that and like try to make it sound natural when I was writing Nicholas's character in the scenes that are on the ship. I was like, I live in a desert.
What is water?
You know, it's like, it's already hard to talk about sailing, but like throw in like, it's an 18th century tall ship. Like, I don't know. But actually like my favorite, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like with Passenger and with the sequel Wayfarer, this is a time travel romance. And so they go to a lot of different time periods and a lot of different places all across the world. And the one thing I learned while I was drafting Passenger was if I was writing about a place I'd never been to, I could go on YouTube and look for a tourist video of that place. Because for whatever reason, some people, they like break out the phone, they break out their like actual video camera, and they just video themselves walking through these historical sites. And so you can get like a very good feel of the layout, the kinds of sounds, the kinds of sights that you would see. So that is my little extra writing tip. If you are writing about a location you've never been to, check YouTube, see if there is a tourist video of that location.
Yes, I have used tourist videos too. That's a great tip. Although it's not as helpful when you're writing, you know, secondary world fantasy.
Yeah, no.
Although it can still give you
Absolutely
inspiration. That's funny. Okay, so here's another fun question. I assume that you've gotten to some points in your life where you kind of had to like, you know, it's crunch time, you've got a deadline coming up, and I feel like most of the writers I know, maybe all of them, we all kind of get to this like survival mode stage where it's like you just got to finish something, and not necessarily with every book, but anyway, I'm just curious, what does that crunch time survival mode look like for you? What kind of things do you have to ignore to get it done?
I always feel like, literally like Valia will send me a text and it'll be like 2 weeks later and I was like, oh yeah, I like responded to her in my head but never actually responded to her. Like,
yeah, I do that.
I'm bad at keeping up with messages. But see, like when I get to the end of a draft, like that's my favorite. And so I'm just like, it's like running downhill. That's my favorite part of the book to write, is always the ending. And so I like just completely focus on the story. I turn into a little golem and I'm inside of my office and I'm ordering DoorDash. I'm sure my neighbors are like, this girl orders a lot of takeout, depending on the deadline and depending on if I'm trying to be healthy or not. It involves a trash can full of Mountain Dew bottles.
Nice.
Yeah, I apparently, according to 23andMe, am a fast metabolizer of caffeine. So I have to like consume a lot more caffeine to get the same caffeine hit. Like I'm drinking tea right now, but this is like nothing. This, I can drink a bottle of Mountain Dew and go to sleep an hour later. It's crazy.
That's me too. So I understand.
I need like the sugar and Mountain Dew to like keep me going. But it's so wild to think about. When I had my day job in publishing, I wrote the Darkest Mind series entirely on the weekends, and I would write from like 6 p.m. on Friday. I would stop by Chipotle. I'd get my burrito bowl. I would stop by the CVS on the corner and get like 3 bottles of Mountain Dew. And I would basically be in my bedroom all weekend. And I would stay up until like 4 o'clock in the morning writing, go to sleep, wake up on Saturday, write all day on Saturday till 4 o'clock in the morning, go to sleep, and then like try to be a normal person on Monday, basically. And that's just, that's how I made it work. And so now that I have a tiny dog who I have to care for, I can't keep like mole person hours. I have to like, but honestly, my most creative time is always like between, it's like very inconvenient. It's always between like midnight and 4 a.m.
Yes.
When, you don't have the distraction of people being on social media. You're kind of in that like half asleep state where you kind of go into like trance mode when you're writing, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, did I write that? But now that I'm getting older, it's much harder for me to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning. So, like really on tough deadlines, I will stay up until like 1 or 2. But for the most part now, I keep pretty normal hours, thankfully. I do work on the weekends on deadline too, but yeah.
That's cool.
Right now I'm off Mountain Dew.
Woohoo!
It's like the siren song of Mountain Dew. It just calls me back.
It's gonna come back someday. I love that.
It's so bad.
That was funny. I have to say, I had to stay up till like 11:30. Recently to meet a deadline, and that was pretty late for me.
You know what? I am a big believer in the 9 p.m. bedtime now. I'm like, this is why I work so hard in my 20s, so I could go to bed at 9 p.m.
Yeah. It is funny though, because I feel like it is a really good time for creative minds, is that those late hours when everybody else is asleep, the world is quiet, Yeah. It's just hard because I always have to wake up early no matter what these days. So staying up late.
It is much easier when you only have a tiny dog.
Yeah.
To take care of. That is another form of privilege. I do not have to take care of another human being.
Well, I mean, whatever life situation you have, you always find a way to make it work, right? So
it's true.
All right. Name 2 of your favorite books and or authors.
Ooh. Valia and Kay.
Oh, yes. That's my dream right now.
It's almost like too hard to pick favorites. I know that sounds terrible.
Okay, all right. That's fair though. Let me rephrase the question then. Name 2 books and or authors that you've been really enjoying recently.
Okay, let's see. Let me think about this for a moment. So I will say that while I'm drafting, it feels like pretty much always, my reading really falls off.
That's normal.
Falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
So it's been good that I've been doing like a little book club. We started off with stronger numbers at the start of the pandemic, and now it's down to like maybe 4 or 5 of us. But it's good. It like forces me to actually read, because otherwise I will like lay in bed watching The Real Housewives instead of reading at night.
That's what this podcast did. I made everybody read.
It's so funny too, because like nothing, like it's not relaxing to watch women fight with each other. I don't know why I do this to myself. Hold on, let me look at my shelf here. You know, a book I really loved, and I feel like everyone else loves too, was The Inheritance Games by Jen Lynn Barnes. I've known Jen forever, it feels like now. And it makes me so happy that she has achieved so much success with this series. She is like a brilliant person. She's the one, Valia, when I was talking about like creating an it list, she is the one who originated that, because she, in her academic life, which I think she's writing full time now, but in her academic life as a professor, she did studies on like the psychology of fandom and that sort of a thing. And I always found that so interesting and so insightful. So I really love that one. That was a breakfast book club read. And then another one was Cemetery Boys. And let's see, what was the other one? Oh, To Kill a Kingdom. Have you guys read that one?
No, I haven't. I've had that one on my list forever, and I always forget about it.
Yeah, it's actually like a really fun retelling. It's fun in the sense that it's like dark. So like,
it's so fun.
It is. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it, because usually like mer people take me out of plots like instantly, because all I can focus on is like the tale and thinking about like trying to like, I don't know why. It's like I love The Little Mermaid, but for some reason I think mermaids and mer people, I should say, are like the one supernatural creature I like really struggle with when it comes to reading paranormal fantasy. And so I was very pleasantly surprised by like how vicious it was, how it had like a great and interesting romantic arc. And with Cemetery Boys, I loved the main character. I loved the main cast. And I thought the way Aiden like really expanded the world and the magic over the course of the book was like perfect. I really, really struggle with pacing my world building and pacing my information on the magic system. So I was like in awe as I was reading the book, but both are great. Yeah, I feel like I've been very lucky in that people have picked great books for the breakfast book club.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. The one we're reading now, I feel like you guys might like this one. It's We Can't Keep Meeting Like This by Rachel Lynn Solomon. It's just a really cute romance. And if you love anything to do with weddings and wedding planning,
cute.
Good. Yeah.
I don't think I've even heard of that except for you posting about it.
Yeah, I definitely haven't heard of that. Although if it's not fantasy, yeah, I pretty much don't pay attention
interesting
very much.
Normally I would only be reading fantasy books because that's my preference too. So the book club has kind of forced me to read more contemporary, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's cool.
So it's a life lesson.
Yeah.
Maybe. I tell people all the time to read outside of the genres that they normally do, and then I don't take my own advice on that. But yeah, it's Rachel, the author, is really funny and really witty. So if you're looking for like a really sweet, funny book, check that one out.
Okay, perfect.
Nice. I love that. All right, I have one more question.
Okay.
Very last one. This has been a source of great contention within our podcast. I'm just kidding. It's gnarly.
I'm like, no.
Our eyes go all wide. She's like, what? I'm just kidding. It's a really stupid question. Okay. But for those of you who have been listening to our podcast, you know, from the beginning, you will know why I'm asking this.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Okay.
I'm nervous.
Wow. You're going to be let down now. Okay. Do you like to drink plain water? And if so, what temperature do you prefer to drink your water? Maria's laughing now.
Wow.
I mean, as you can probably tell from my Mountain Dew addiction, I am not the biggest fan of plain water, although I am trying to be, because I live in a desert where I am constantly dehydrated and constantly wondering why I feel sleepy and kind of tired and maybe even a little dizzy. And I'm like, oh yeah,
the water.
I haven't had any water today. So I've been drinking a lot of water with lemon, which is not apparently great for your teeth.
Oh.
But it's good for your insides.
Yes.
So
actually, that reminds me of okay, this is another tangent. I'm sorry.
Good. We love the tangent.
But back in my New York City days, when I was working full time and writing The Darkest Minds on the weekends, I went into CVS to buy my Mountain Dew, and there was a young child who was in the like soda case aisle and saw me taking the Mountain Dew out and looked at me, like gave me the biggest, most magnificent stink eye ever, and was like, "My mom told me that soda will rot your teeth. Like, you shouldn't be drinking that." Like, I was like, is this like
a child?
The voice of, yeah, I was like, is this the voice of God communicating through this young child?
Clearly didn't work.
No, I was like, I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. But now I have cavities. So clearly that child was right. But I think about that now when I drink lemon water, because lemon is so acidic. Yeah. I can't believe I have to worry about my teeth. But I also like, it's so hot here. I feel like I love a really cold glass of water, ice water, but it is like a shock to your system. I remember there was that whole discussion about how you're supposed to actually drink room temperature water.
Yes.
But like something about the cold water.
Everyone remember that I like my water room temperature.
She does. Listen. And it's weird to me because I like cold water, so we're always make fun of her.
It does make sense if you live in Arizona, though. I mean,
it is like 115 degrees here most of the time during the summer, so room temperature water for us would be like 80-degree water. Like,
I would be fine with drinking 80-degree water, just in case anyone is wondering.
I like the extremes. It either has to be like hot tea level water or icy.
Okay, so you would drink plain water that's very hot, though.
It's just like, no.
I mean, I would, but...
I think I would have to put like lemon in it.
Oh, okay.
I guess. If it was really cold out, I would drink hot water, but we never get to experience that here because our winter is like 60 degrees. Yeah, I don't know. Hot plain water just sounds like drinking bath water to me.
Well, I know. That's why when you said that, I was surprised. I feel like 80-degree water would be more understandable than drink hot water.
But it's also like, I like hot water too with like emergency in it. So it's like,
that makes sense.
I don't think I would ever drink plain hot water unless it was really cold outside. But oh my God, I have never thought about that before.
You're welcome.
Maybe I'll try drinking just plain hot water.
You're welcome,
now.
Everyone who's listening to the podcast, for making you think about the temperature of your water more than you needed to think
I know, our listeners are like,
questions.
Seriously, this is like the 4th time we're discussing this.
It's our thing now.
It is.
Right?
We're
whether you wanted it to be or not.
Signature question.
Yeah. Everybody prepare yourself if you're ever on the podcast.
Okay, that is all of my questions. So
that's all of your questions.
Had any others, Valia, to end it?
Well, we talked about what you're reading, so that's that. Do you want to talk about your current project that you're having coming out next year?
Yeah, early next year. I keep asking for the release date, and I don't think they've quite figured it out yet. And I think it's in part because I am still not done editing it. So they're like, the reason we don't have a date is you, Alex Bracken, and they just don't want to say it. This book has had quite the journey. It's called Silver in the Bone. It was a title I thought of as I was making a sandwich after my agent told me she hated my original title and we needed a new one before we could submit it to publishers. So I thought of it as I was making a sandwich. And it is another YA contemporary fantasy. And this one uses more like Arthurian lore. It's more of the like Welsh Arthurian lore, I would say. Like, it's kind of an older tradition than the like French Romance tradition of Arthurian literature. I don't know why I felt very nerdy saying that, but
nerdy in the best way, though.
I'm trying to think of how to describe it without spoiling it. It really is an adventure. It's about like adventure. There's romance. It's very dark because it's a book by me. Valia, how would you describe this book?
Very good.
Very good.
No, I know. I'm like trying to
agree.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to remember like how they presented it. Well, it's like it's got like the Indiana Jones vibes.
Yeah, it really is like a I think the way I pitched it to my agent and later to the editors was like, it's sort of like a feminist Indiana Jones that uses kind of Celtic mythology, and it basically is about like I don't have my pitch for it yet. You guys are like, this author is this is
normal, okay? We cannot pitch our books.
Yeah,
so
it really, shockingly, it's like one of the skills you have to develop as an author is the ability to come up with like a really good quick pitch. Mm-hmm. Like Lore's was very easy. This one is slightly less easy.
Yeah.
So it's about these treasure hunters who essentially raid the tombs and vaults of sorceresses, and it's set partly in our world, partly in the Mystic Isle of Avalon. Tamsin, who's the main character, is trying to break a curse on her brother, and they're searching for a ring that's rumored to be able to break any sort of enchantment, and that takes them on a wild hunt through their world into Avalon. And then there's a lot of darkness. Avalon is not at all what they were expecting. There is a hate to love romance. There's a wide cast of characters. There's a lot of kick-ass ladies who use magic in it and all that. So I think there's some pretty good twists in it, though I don't want to like
that was an amazing pitch, I have to say. Like, I was already excited.
I gotta like refine that one
a little bit. Yeah, but no, it is my favorite thing by you. I'm like completely
Valia was
biased.
Very kind to give me Valia was very kind to read and give me some feedback on it, especially on the romantic arc, because I feel like writing romance is actually not a strength of mine as a writer.
I think you do good work.
She helped me clarify places where I did not need to get into so much detail about the magic and the world building, because I like my unique skill as an author is that I can overcomplicate anything, and so a lot of my editing comes down to streamlining the plot, really finding out what scenes matter the most to the story and drive the character development, and also just simplifying. I'm always like, oh, readers will love learning about this random tangent, and my editor's like, nobody cares. Like, reel it in, Bracken.
Well, it's hard because some readers do love those things, and then some readers don't, obviously, but it is hard to kind of like write a book that's broadly enjoyed.
Yeah, for sure. And like with lore, I know a lot of my author friends are like, oh, I think, I'm burnt out on writing series. I want to write a standalone. And I was like, standalone is much harder than you think.
Yeah.
After writing lore, I don't think I like fully appreciated how difficult it is to fully get that entire world building in there, to really have the character arcs be big and present throughout, and to fit in like everything that you want to fit into the story. Lore was definitely a really fun challenge for me, and oh my gosh, I had to cut so many mythology references out of lore because again, my editor was like, nobody cares. Nobody will get this. Please cut it. Please trim it. This book is already like 550 pages long. Please trim it.
I'm never that mean with my notes, okay?
No, your notes are always wonderful and positive. Yeah. No, it's really like you are so good at giving feedback, Valia. I'm like really grateful that you took the time to read it, not once, but twice. So, thank you.
Well, I'm very excited about it because I get like addicted to books sometimes, and my last addiction was Dreams Lie Beneath by Rebecca Ross. Like I literally pushed that book on every single person, and I made people read it and people love it, and I'm like, yes, I feel validated in my taste. I feel like that's how I'm gonna feel about Silver. Like once it's out, I'm gonna just like push it because I love it that much. I think it's like, how you grow as a writer in every book you write, whatever, but I don't know. It just hit all the spots for me. So I'm like, yes. Awesome. So anyway.
It's definitely a little bit more romantic than lore. The world building is, I think, slightly easier to follow because you're not being forced to track, 9 different families and all the different gods. And so, especially if you have no frame of reference for Greek mythology, lore, I think, posed a slight challenge. But if you are interested in lore and you don't know that much about Greek mythology, we do have a lot of character guides in the back and different family charts. So you will be able to follow along, even if you are not a Greek mythology nut like I am.
Okay, so I have to ask, how much of the story takes place like in our world, and how much takes place in Avalon? Or if it's a spoiler to say, you don't have to, but
No, I don't. It's not a spoiler. I would say it's 500 pages right now, like almost 500 exactly. And maybe the first 135 pages are set in our world.
Okay,
So
cool.
It's really just the first act is set in our world, and then most of it is set in Avalon, this one. But I get to write a sequel in which we'll see. We'll see what that balance is.
Well, that's cool. I'm so excited about it. in case that wasn't abundantly clear, I've been, ever since I read the first email about it many months ago, I don't remember when it was, I've been very excited.
I've been so bad about sending out newsletters too. I recently switched off of MailChimp into Squarespace, which hosts my website. MailChimp, man, really, really put me through the ringer and like downgrading my account. I was like, oh my gosh, MailChimp. That's why I have not sent out any sort of newsletter recently, but I'm hoping to get back on track and send them out, at least 4 times a year, and then for releases. But yeah, it's good to hear that people still read my newsletter.
Of course. Okay, one last question before we wrap it up. So we talked about your writing mode, like when you're on a deadline, right? Mm-hmm. So what about you outside of a deadline? Like, how do you relax? Like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like decompressing time, I guess, after crazy deadline. Do you have one?
How do you recover after?
Yeah. I know I am a boring adult simply by the fact that after a deadline, I look forward to cleaning my house.
That's the best. Come on now.
Just organizing everything that fell into chaos, like steam mopping my floors. It's actually like kind of sad in a way, but
it's not sad.
So
that's
satisfying.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, someone on I did a Q&A on Instagram a couple days ago, earlier this week, and someone's like, what are your hobbies? And I was like, I don't have any hobbies.
Cleaning my house.
I sleep in my free time. I walk Tenny. I will throw the ball to him when it's not 120 degrees outside. I was like, do I have to have hobbies?
You don't.
I feel like I do need actually some hobbies to help decompress a little bit, so I'm not just constantly steam mopping my floors. But yeah,
I suppose. I don't know.
I wish I could give you this amazing answer. Like I go out and garden. I knit a blanket.
I mean, like gardening would be a hard thing to only do when you're decompressing. Though.
Yeah.
I feel like that needs more constant attention. So
yeah, and unfortunately here, as I keep saying, it's just so hot, everything dies. And so I've now started, now that we're supposed to hit, let's see, today it's going to be a high of 86, but it's supposed to be in the upper 90s this weekend.
Yep.
Now is the time when all of my plants die. So I've started the really sad process of swapping out some plants with fake ones, which always makes me feel really weird.
Yeah.
And but I have hanging baskets of fake leaves, but you just miss the green so much during the summer, and it's impossible to keep anything alive except for cacti and some really established plants. So
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Now is the season of fake flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
That's funny. Also, as I asked this question, I was like, the way I decompress is that I watch 50 hours of TV. So I don't know if mine is any better.
Like I said, I watch a lot of Real Housewives. I don't know, I guess it's just nice that the conflict is outside of my brain. Yeah. But it's usually, I have to try to save long-running TV shows and marathons for when I'm signing what are called tip-ins, which are these blank sheets of paper that I sign that then get glued along the edge and literally tipped into the finished bound book. So that's how you get instead of sending an author 10,000 finished books to sign, they'll send just these single sheets of paper. And when I was doing them for lore, I watched all 12, or I think it's 12 seasons of ER. It took me that many seasons of ER to get through all of those tip-ins. So I have to find, do you guys have any good long-running series that I can marathon for the silver tip-ins when they finally arrive?
My go-to shows are always Criminal Minds and Supernatural, because they're both 15 seasons. So
oh my gosh, Supernatural is that show where I feel like everyone, anytime there was a Supernatural episode on, Twitter would be like, Supernatural's still on?
Yeah.
I really like fell off in watching that. So maybe that's a good one. Maybe I should go back and start from the beginning and see how far I can get.
Do it. It's so good. I rewatch it all the time. Sometimes when I write, I'll have either Supernatural or Criminal Minds on in the background because I've seen it so many times I don't have to pay attention. But like their voices are soothing for my brain. I don't know. It's weird. So I'll have them on in the background when I work. So
I know. It actually helps if you've like already watched it before while you're trying to like do something else.
Yeah.
So, like with Real Housewives, I can like marathon a season while signing because you don't have to like actively look up. You can still follow just by listening. But
it's true.
Yeah, by the end of my ER marathon, I felt like I could successfully intubate someone. Like I had watched it so many times. I was like, oh, I now have a wealth of unneeded medical information.
Yeah, so in the next book, she just has a medical person.
Yeah. I wonder where this knowledge came from.
I think like Noah Wiley, maybe it was Noah Wiley. I was reading a story about how he ended up like practicing so much through all of these different scenes. He either helped intubate someone or gave someone CPR, and he like just from his like acting on this story would have been better if I had actually remembered the details, but I will admit
it's still pretty good.
But it's like it's interesting to think about these actors on medical shows who like know a lot but aren't necessarily able to perform said surgery, but feel like they probably should be able to. Anyway.
Yeah. Well,
one last tangent for us.
On that note.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. I love the tangents.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Make sure to follow Alex on Instagram. I'll leave a link to her Instagram at Alex Bracken and also a link to her books so you guys can check that out. Before you go, please also give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform and on Instagram at Reading Queens Pod, and then tell everybody to come hang out with us because we do the best episodes around.
That's
right.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. We will talk to you guys later.
Bye.